idea what's going on. So like I created a poll, but I don't know where it went. So, okay, density altitude. Density altitude, this is where we get down to what really matters. All right, so for example,
your screen.
Yeah.
So example, I want to fly my airplane.
Kevin, we don't see your screen.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Your screen is not up.
What do you guys see then?
Just you.
You.
Oh, that's a whole lot of me then.
I see Steve. Oh.
Whatever you did last time, switched it to that. Yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
There you go.
I can
Just
see
have
the
to remember
screen.
to do it. So you should be
Got
seeing
screen.
the screen.
Yep.
I have
much
two
better.
screens, so I'm looking over here and I can see everybody's face and look over here when I'm writing. So and I move my camera way back so that you don't have like so much of me. I have a face radio. And my microphone, it's loud enough for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, density altitude. Okay, so I get in my airplane to go flying over at McClellan, and I listen to the automated weather service, and it tells me it tells me what the barometric pressure is, and then I set, it's called a Colesman window, and I set the little barometric pressure on my altimeter, and if I'm listening to them correctly, and I set my altimeter for the right barometric pressure, like they say, well, today it's 29.91 inches of mercury. So I said a little thing for 29.91. The little needles are actually going to start moving around inside of my altimeter. And when I'm done, what should my altimeter be reading? If I
Density
Steve.
altitude.
should say 77 feet right on my altimeter, right? And that is my
Actual.
Very good. Okay, so it's my actual. But the thing is, if I go flying in the summertime and I'm listening to this automated weather service and it's 100 degrees outside, they're going to give me a note. They're going to say something like, and the altimeter is 29.92, density altitude, 4,000 feet. And so what does that mean?
Since the air is more dense, it's going to act like as if you're at 4,000 feet.
Okay,
So
so
the conditions your plane
you're
will
right.
run at.
It acts like I'm at 4,000 feet. So that means the air is more or less dense?
Less dense.
Less
dense.
Yeah.
So my airplane is going to perform like it's at 4,000 feet. The wings aren't going to work as well. The engine's not going to work as well. And so actually the way things are set up in the carburetor, it's actually going to make it run a little richer. We're going to talk about that. So density altitude is pressure altitude.
Corrected for temperature.
Corrected for non-standard temperature. Corrected for non-standard temp. It's what the airplane and the engine feels. It's what the airplane
And what's the difference? Like, where's the cutoff for that? Because he said it's 59 degrees Fahrenheit. So what if it's like 70 degrees outside? Do they give you that?
Well, technically, if it's 59 degrees, the minute it's 60, it changes, or the minute it's 58, it changes. It go down too. So I actually, I bought a new transponder with ADS-B, and I had to install a temperature probe, and it has a pressure monitor in it, so it knows pressure and it knows temperature. So on my encoder, my transponder, I actually have a screen I can go to, and it will tell me what my pressure altitude or density altitude is. So I could be flying along at an actual reading of my altimeter, 5,000 feet. If it's really, really cold and we have a high pressure area, I can look over and I can see that it's actually, my airplane thinks I'm lower. Or even if I was taking off from McClellan and it's a very cold day, it would actually tell me that I'm below 77 as far as density altitude goes.
Better performance.
Yeah. To a point.
Based on humidity. Humidity, temp, and pressure. let's see, we'll tie this all up as.
Hey
as
Kevin, how would you
density is reduced.
how would you accommodate for like if it was a 4,000 feet density altitude? How would you accommodate for that when you hop in your plane?
More power, longer
Would you
runway.
change the setting, or would you just note that in your head?
No. Okay, so let's say I go up to well, I go up to like Columbia or someplace up in the mountains, Tahoe, where we actually do have a high altitude, or then you're going to actually lean out your carburetor. It's going to run rich.
Oh, okay.
So, more often than not, what you're thinking about is your takeoff roll. But if you actually get into higher altitudes where the air is thinner, then you do have to lean out your carburetor, which is where we're going with all of this. Not only that, we're going to tie this into turbochargers and stuff. Why do we have turbocharger? What does it do?
Increasing pressure.
So for every 10 degrees increase over standard day, the engine will lose about 1% power. Or every 10 degrees, 10 degrees Fahrenheit, that's actually a big F, Fahrenheit, increase over standard day, the engine will lose 1%. Duncan's making too much noise. There we go, that helped. The engine will lose about 1% power. So let's see, standard day is 58 and it's 100 degrees outside. We should do easy math. It's 158 degrees. So 100 minus 58. So that's 42 degrees difference. So I'm going to lose how much power?
4%.
About 4%. So Steve, how much is that in your airplane?
What?
No, not what. How much is that in your airplane?
4% of power?
Yep.
Well, if I have
That's his whole
okay, let me
plane.
do some simple math. Yeah, I mean, I only have 100 horsepower, so it's 4 horsepower basically.
4 horsepower. You lost 4 ponies.
Yeah.
4 out of 5.
English
Five.
work ponies, assuming it's not tea time.
And by the way, horsepower.
Oh my God, Zach! What is?
I was talking with Katie and she was talking about girl power and I tried to equate that to horsepower. Apparently that's something completely different.
Wow.
Look at Zach's picture.
Yeah, that freaked
Okay,
me
thank
out,
you,
man.
Zach, for putting a nice kitty up.
I told you, I got you. I'll keep it fresh.
I can't really take it serious if I'm being honest.
Looking for the dog. He's usually under my feet. He has his own couch in my office, so he's laying over on his couch. All right, let's talk about fuel. We're going to be here for a while. Fuel. What time we in?
4:20. We came back at 4:30.
5:30 minus 10. Got it. Okay, fuel. All right, so we're going to talk about fuel. I have a lot to say about fuel. Let's talk about some terms of fuel. Terms. All right, terms. Number 1, volatility. Volatility. That volatility is a good thing in gasoline. Volatility, and before I go too far, where's my chat? Chat, there we go. I didn't have my chat open.
Internet keeps disconnecting.
There, now I can see if somebody has to say slow down, I can overlook over there and say slow down. All right, so volatility. That's the gasoline's tendency to vaporize. Realize that this isn't my words, it's somebody else, so be careful with this. Liquid gasoline doesn't really burn. So in theory, you could put a match out in liquid gasoline. In actuality, you'll explode because above the gasoline is vapor, and it's the vapor that burns. So as you were taking the match to go into the gasoline, you would bypass the vapor, you would go through the vapor, which would then explode, and then you would be losing an eyebrow. So that's a bad thing. So volatility, the gasoline's tendency to vaporize. The gasoline's tendency to vaporize. Vaporize. Volatility is important. Volatility is important because liquids and solids don't, well, somebody did, not my words, liquids and solids don't burn.
So I have a question, Kevin. When you mean like volatility, since you said it's a tendency to vaporize, it's not like how easily it burns. So for example, like diesel, it would have like a high or low volatility because it burns. It's harder to just catch on fire. You can't put a match to it and have it.
That's right.
burn.
So I'd say
that
that's
has
very
low.
doesn't vaporize. The vapors don't light off.
Okay.
So volatility is important because liquids and solids don't burn, only vapors. Of course, when I read that one time and before I put in my notes, I thought, well, that's ridiculous. Let's think about logs in a fire. You're telling me that that's not burning? Well, then I got to reading more, and then the person went on to say that, yeah, basically that is true, that at the surface level, it's actually vaporizing, and that's what's burning. So
It's wood vapors.
it's wood vapors.
Is that a new flavor?
It is. It's a new cough drop flavor.
Nice organic vape.
Still trying to find a way I can write comfortably here. I have not found it. All right. Okay.
Get a standing desk.
I do. I might, but my desk is too short. I think if I would
Put it in your lap.
that wouldn't work. What?
Put it in your lap.
Well, it's kind of what I do. I have a drawer that pulls out right here that is supposed to be a writing table. Then I'm down here like this, and it's weird. And then I run out of room, and then all kinds of problems. Nothing's working. All right, where am I at? If it's so, volatility is good, but only to a point, because if it is too volatile, then the fuel or gas will boil. Hey, water boils at what degree?
300 Fahrenheit.
112.
112.
212.
212 at sea level pressure. Can you get water? Can you get water to boil at room temperature?
Yeah, you could. You pressurize it.
Did you say pressurize it?
Yeah.
Go the other way.
Oh,
Pressurizing.
Depressurize
In
it.
the
Put it in the
vacuum.
vacuum.
Pressurizing, yeah.
Vacuum.
So that's why, and you'll learn this when you work on air conditioning systems. When you work on not an air cycle machine, but a vapor cycle machine, you put it under a vacuum. And the reason why you put it under vacuum is because you don't want water inside of your system, because it's going to create ice and block up the expansion orifice. And so you put it under vacuum, and the water actually boils at room temperature, and the vapors go out at the pump. So you can get the same thing in fuel lines and in gas tanks. And so if we have a fuel line running from our fuel tank to our carburetor, and the fuel inside of that fuel line starts to boil,
Vapor lock.
you get vapor lock, which is a bubble that actually blocks the fuel from going through. So that is a very bad thing. Let's see. So volatile fuel will boil, and that then it will boil, creating air pockets. creating air pockets in fuel lines, known as vapor lock. Vapor lock is very bad. It literally stops the fuel from flowing to the carburetor. And when you get into fuel systems later on in second year, you're going to be talking about what causes vapor lock. I may have put a few Q&A questions about that, but to avoid vapor lock, you want to avoid your fuel lines running anywhere hot, because heat is going to create the fuel to vaporize. That causes the air pocket. That's a problem. So you want to keep your fuel lines away from any heat source, sharp bends, and the way you run it. So known as vapor lock. Or you could, let's say your fuel lines are run correctly, or you could have a loss of fuel through vents. It would really suck if you filled your airplane up and every time you came back to flight the next week, it was empty because all the fuel vaporized out. So, all right, so you don't want it too volatile or you're going to get vapor lock is our big problem. But if it is not volatile enough, volatile enough, then the fuel won't vaporize. Then the fuel will not vaporize. I think that ran a little long. All right, vaporized. So good volatility. Good volatility will be volatile enough. Good volatility. Thanks. Didn't want to hear myself.
Yeah.
To start a cold engine, but not so volatile that we get vapor lock. All right, we'll talk more about vapor lock. So vapor lock. What is vapor lock? It is a condition that occurs when fuel turns to vapor. In the fuel system. In the fuel system. It is caused by, and I just gave you the three things. Do you remember what they were? No, I think I gave you two.
Sharp bends.
All right, sharp bends in fuel lines. Sharp.
Heat.
Bends in fuel lines. And I heard heat, which is correct, and low pressures. All right, well, low pressures. How am I going to deal with low pressures? I mean, heat's easy. Don't run the fuel lines next to the exhaust. Don't run it next to hot bends. Sharp bends, okay, don't make sharp bends. How do I deal with low pressures?
You pressurize the fuel system?
There you go. How am I going to do that?
Add a pump.
Add a pump. That's called a boost pump. So an aircraft that have fuel pumps, my aircraft does not have any fuel pumps. It's a gravity feed system. So, but in an aircraft with low wings, they're always going to have a fuel pump. But if you have an aircraft that's likely to go to high altitude, number one, they're probably going to have fuel injection and turbocharging, not a float carb like mine. What they're going to do is they're going to use two fuel pumps, always two. if you need them. You always want two because you want redundancy, and you're going to have a boost pump in the wing, which is a centrifugal or pump that will pressurize the fuel line down to the engine, where the fuel pump, the engine-driven fuel pump, takes over and then does the final delivery. So that is what it's caused by. All right, vapor lock.
Is the fuel boost pump always in the wing?
Yes. Yeah, you want it at the source. And they're usually
It's like a
centrifugal.
lift pump in a car, right?
What?
Like a lift pump in a car or a truck?
A lift pump? Actually, boost pumps are a lot like the regular. Well, you're talking about diesels, I think?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's called a boost pump. So it's basically a pump that's in the fuel tank. It's centrifugal, right? Not constant displacement. And it's going to put fuel under pressure to the engine-driven pump,
Yes.
which will then boost up to the rail pressure, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the same thing.
And we're gonna get into these pumps more in depth, right?
In the fuel pump section. So now we're just talking about, really I just want to talk about vapor lock. But it's always good, I guess, to cover things a few times. Okay, number two. Number three.
Number 3.
Latent heat of vaporization. Latent heat of vaporization. Latent heat of vaporization. All right, what is the definition? So speaking of cars, my car was making a very funny noise. It was making me very angry or concerned. So I took it in for diagnosis, and I was right, unfortunately, that my rear end was going out. You care to guess what Mercedes-Benz wanted for a rear end for a car?
10 grand.
Yep.
Your whole bank.
What?
How old is it? How old is your Mercedes?
2013.
No, wow.
So I got a call on our break from my, I found a used one, so be taking care of that. Anyway, so definition. What is the latent heat of vaporization? That is the amount of heat necessary to vaporize a given amount of fuel. The amount of heat required or necessary to vaporize a given amount of fuel, a given amount of fuel. Well, I tell you that because we do have to vaporize the fuel, and it takes heat to vaporize the fuel. So anytime you have fuel that has been vaporized, which we must do to get the engine to work, it takes heat away from something. And that creates some problems within the carburetor. So fuel needs heat to vaporize. Heat to vaporize. Heat. All right, fuel needs heat to, yes, that is correct. So where does the heat come from?
From here?
From a heater?
Exhaust.
No, that was a good thought.
From engine.
So from the engine. All right. So heat comes from air and metal parts. It doesn't have to be metal. I should just metal, but there's metal inside the carburetor, and that's what's going by. So, and metal, let me see, from metal parts in the carburetor, metal parts. In the carburetor. All right, and it gets the carburetor monkey very cold. So I tell you that because you have a problem inherent with carburetors that I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be a problem with cars, because cars, number one, are downdraft, as where our carburetor in an aircraft goes on the bottom and it goes up, which is one problem. And just the way our engines are in aircraft, this becomes the problem. So if you are near freezing, but not quite freezing, or you pull the air into the carburetor and you pull air, you pull the heat from the air, you're actually going to get the air inside sometimes down to a freezing level. And then when you freeze the air in the carburetor, you're going to get, for lack of a better term, it's going to start snowing in there. So you're going to make ice. And this ice is going to start building up on the metal parts. And eventually that ice is going to build up to the point where it actually stops the carburetor from working. It blocks it up. We call that refrigerant ice. And that's what's happening there. So that's why carburetors have carburetor heaters on them, so that you can actually heat the air and melt the ice. So vaporization can cause.
How that one works with Venturi?
How does it work with the Venturi?
Yeah.
It actually blocks it off. It
Oh.
changes the whole shape of the Venturi. You start, you know, when you have carburetor ice, if you have like a fixed pitch propeller, you're going to see the RPM start dropping. The aircraft's going to start getting rougher and rougher, and you're going to start watching your RPM go down for no reason whatsoever. So now you're going to think to yourself, well, it's cold. I've got carburetor ice, and so I've got to get rid of it. So you're going to reach over and you're going to pull your carb heat on. Now, when you pull your carburetor heat on, you're going to do a couple of things. Number one, you're going to add hot air to the carburetor. And we talked about, what does that do to power?
Decreasing.
Right? You're going to lose power. So here I am, I'm flying along, I'm over the mountains, and my engine starts running rough. So I got a pucker factor going on. And so now I'm a little frightened, but I'm thinking, okay, they told me I should pull the carb heat on. So reach over, pull the carb heat on, and it's going to get a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so your initial thought would be, if you didn't know better, well, I don't want that on. But so you're going to pull the carb heat on, and it's going to get worse because we introduced hot air. And so we are have a higher, we decrease the density of the air. It's going to get richer. That's going to be bad. But now we introduce this hot air, which is going to start melting the ice, which is going to turn to water, and the engine is going to start ingesting water. So it's going to get worse from there. So it's going to go from rough to bad to worse. And then suddenly.
Then won't it get a little bit better?
Well, then, what's that?
After that?
Well, then it's going to get a
I said
lot.
at the end of, yeah.
But you're gonna be losing altitude, right?
No, you want to hold your altitude.
Okay.
It's going to get better. It's not that big a deal, but it's going to get better. And then you're going to push the carburetor heat back in, and you're going to start getting cold air. It's going to run really well. You're like, well, that's better. Now, if you have a constant speed propeller, you're not going to see an RPM change. You're going to see a manifold pressure change. The RPM, the prop's going to fight to keep the same RPM. You're just going to see that manifold pressure change. So we have to think about what's going to do. Manifold pressure is going to become more of a vacuum, so it's going to drop. So, all right, where was he?
What is the time frame of the carb heat being applied and things starting to work itself out?
You know, I've never really had a significant carb heat or carb ice problem. I've had it on the ground a lot, and 30 seconds, you're done. So I'll put it on for about 30 seconds, and it's fine. It's pushed back in. So it's pretty fast. Heat comes from metal parts. Where am I here? All the way down here. Look at that. Metal parts. So vaporization can cause, vaporization can cause the air and metal to get cold enough to form ice. Can cause the air and metal to become cold enough to form ice in the carburetor. All right, can I move, Janet? She's very quiet.
Yes, you can.
No, she said
Okay.
wait.
She said wait.
She said wait.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Said okay.
Oh, okay. I got it. Thanks. I'll look around my big old microphone. There we go. I think I'm talking very loud. My family's like, why is he yelling at everybody? Maybe I don't have to talk so loud. You can probably hear me on the microphone. You'll tell me if you can't hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was latent heat of vaporization. Let's talk about vapor pressure. Vapor pressure. It is the pressure given off by fuel in a sealed container when it is heated to a certain point. So it is, let me see, the pressure given off. Pressure given off by a sealed amount of gas. Sealed amount of gas in a bomb.
What?
Yes. Yeah, what? It's the pressure given off by sealed amount of gas in a bomb.
Is there a proper term for aviation?
What's that?
Is that a proper term for aviation?
Yes, it is.
Industry term.
This is a
You can say it
vapor
while you're
pressure.
on the flight.
Well, maybe I should call it a vapor pressure test apparatus, but the actual name is a vapor pressure bomb. I don't know why they call it that, but that's what they do. Well, oh, it even says that. See, I'm not lying.
Like a bomb
Can
chamber.
it go
Yeah.
boom?
All right, so you put your little sample in there and you heat it up to a certain point, and the vapor is going to be created, and then that is going to see how much pressure that is created. So thus the term vapor pressure. So how much pressure do you have? So the higher the vapor pressure, the more likely the fuel is to vapor lock, which means it's giving off a lot of pressure or a lot of vapor, which it creates a lot of pressure. There we go. In a bomb. So the higher the vapor pressure, the higher the vapor pressure, the more likely the fuel is to vapor lock. Fuel is to vapor lock, is to vapor lock.
Now, do different grades of fuel have a different vapor pressure?
Different fuel has different vapor pressure, and that's what the little scientists look at. Actually, I have this right here, just as a side note. It is 7 pounds. I believe this is aviation fuel. 7 pounds at 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit is appropriate vapor pressure.
Is that 100 low lead or Jet A?
But we're talking about gasoline, aviation gasoline. Sorry, I'm just looking around different screens over here. Okay. Group chat, everyone's doing okay? Wait, okay, you can move. Thank you. Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the octane rating. So you go to the store and you buy your, not right now, don't go to the store right now, but you got your choices, right?
Yeah. Oh, 87, 89, 91.
I know. I was wondering if you guys were going to notice. I stole this off the internet, and after I stole it, I realized these aren't the actual numbers. Here in California, we have 87, 89, 91, right?
Yeah.
Where are you putting your Mercedes?
I
91.
believe so.
91?
91. Well, why do I put 91 in my Mercedes? Well, we're going to talk about that. As a manufacturer tells me I have to. And a lot of people are under the misconception that if you really love your car, you're going to get the good gas. And the good gas is over here on the right, and the bad gas is over here on the left. That is not true.
Yeah.
You get bad gas at Arco. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. I just don't buy Arco gas. Okay. So we're talking about octane rating. What is octane rating? That's that number there that's on the fuel pump. And that's what you're selecting. It's not a quality of gas by any means. It's strictly an octane rating and what your car actually needs, or aircraft as the case is. So it is an expression. What is octane rating? It is an expression of the fuels That wasn't my phone.
No, you don't got an Apple.
Not mine.
Steve.
It's not mine.
Yeah, it is yours.
It is an expression of the fuel's anti-detonation. How would we try to spell anti-detonation one more time? In a usable form, A-N-T-I, anti-detonation. D-E-T. I'm trying really hard. D-E-T.
It's anti and then space and then detonation.
No, it's one word, anti-detonation.
I just checked whatever.
On your way.
The definition checker thing. Like, I mean, how to spell it. How it's spelled, I guess. Whatever.
Alex,
He's the professor, okay?
just keep quiet.
It's all right. I think it's one word. When it's referring to this, I don't know. You can make it 2 words. I won't be upset with you. All right. So it's an expression that fuels anti-detonation characteristics. Well, how did they come up with this? Well, I don't want to really go down this rabbit hole, but I want to tell you a couple things. So first of all, there's something called iso-octane. So iso-octane. This stuff right here, that's a type of gas, a type of gas has a rating of 100. Of 100. All right. And then we have iso-octane, normal heptane, normal, not abnormal, but normal heptane. Normal heptane, that's also a type of gas, type of gas, has a rating of 0.
So if 100 low lead didn't have lead in it, would it just be iso-octane then?
No, it wouldn't really. So, all right. And so the question that comes up right away, even in my own mind, is, oh, well, then why don't we just use iso-octane type of gas? Well, I'm going to make the assumption that wouldn't be a very good gas. Maybe it's got a really high vapor pressure. Maybe it's got bad burn characteristics. There's a lot more that goes into fuel than just, hey, we want this octane rating. And we have to worry about the anti-detonation characteristics. And again, what is anti-detonation? When I talk about that, what am I talking about?
That the gasoline doesn't detonate.
Right. So it's very important. Detonation, also called pinging, and we talked a lot about that last semester, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that's very bad. When we get detonation in the engine,
It's like a hammer.
Yeah, it's like a hammer. So I'm
The
watching
piston.
Cameron over here. I don't know. He's doing something weird. So, it's like yeah, for lack of a better term. There you go. So Cameron, so you got your virtual background, but then I see people kind of walking in and out of the aura there. It's kind of,
My girlfriend let the dog out, so she just came back in.
that's okay. I don't mind. But it's like somebody just appeared through the mist. Like, whoa. Okay, so.
I like that I can use the restroom and still maintain, what's going on. It's pretty great.
I like that. I am too. I just let it dry.
Just turn your microphone off in the restroom.
Yeah, I don't want to hear the toilet flushing. Make sure you wash your hands. All right, so we don't want the fuel to detonate. And it's the fuel that's going to detonate, so we're really worried about that. So that's what we're talking about right now. So, so we have this iso-octane and normal heptane. And well, for obvious reasons, we don't use normal heptane because it has a detonation characteristic of 0, which means it would detonate all the time. And we don't use isooctane, which has a nice rating of 100 because of some other reason that I'm not aware of. However, knowing these two things, we can put this together. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 4. So gasoline, gas, I'm just putting gas, anti-knock, and we'll put a hyphen there this time. Anti-knock or octane rating. Octane rating is determined by several methods. There is the research octane number. We'll abbreviate that RON. This is the most common. I'll just make that note. Most common.
Real quick, anti-knock means octane rating, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's why I put anti-knock, parentheses, octane rating. So we have the research octane number, the RON.
It is
I can write all this down, but how can I make it really simple? Determined by running the fuel, the test engine with the variable compression ratio. And then what they do is they take the isooctane and the normal heptane, and they'll vary it in ratios until they make the engine knock. And so then what they will do, and then also the engine has a variable compression, so they can change it, make it knock at this pressure, that pressure. So they're going to run these two fuels in and mix it until they get the engine to knock, and they'll say, okay, then they're going to compare that to their test sample of fuel. And I've actually saw something where it's pretty cool. They've got an engine which has two completely different fuel systems, two carburetors that are identical. And so they'll run it on the test fuel they want to sample, say, okay, here's its characteristics. Then they'll use the normal heptane and the isooctane, and they'll blend it until it does exactly what the test fuel did. And they'll say, okay, so if it's like 70% or 80% isooctane and 20% normal heptane, then they'll say that it's 80 octane. So let me see if I can write that down. So say running uses a test engine that compares.
About 520, by the way.
It's time, 5:20? All right. Thanks for letting me know. Well, I'll stop right there, and I'll see you guys in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Damn.
Jump on the Discord, boys.
I'll see you
Jack,
there,
that
boy.
crap cat.
I can't. My power's out.